I think that one of the really important roles that parents play in this process, and this is certainly true particularly with your sons out of school like Salisbury, whether they're boarders here or day students here, is that you're facilitating their campus visits is going to be an important part of the parent role. And there are lots of different opportunities, and you'll learn from the college counselors some of the advice they have about visiting colleges. But I think that that's definitely a place that parents should feel free to be quite involved. At the same time, there's a fine line between facilitating the campus visits and kind of running the visit. And I think that for those of you who visited not only Salisbury, but perhaps other independent schools at the time your son was maybe in 8th grade, there was a different role for parents to play with an 8th grader than there is for you to play with an 18-year-old or 17-year-old. And so it's important for you to kind of come to an agreement that when you walk into the admissions office, it is your son who walks up to the receptionist and says, "Hi, my name is John Smith, and I'm here for my interview," or "I'm here for my tour." It is not mom or dad that walks up and says, "Hi, we're the Smiths, and we're here for our interview." That might have been very appropriate, again, 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, but it's not now, because you have to fast forward to the next fall when John has to walk into the academic advising office and get a class changed, or when he needs to go into the health and counseling center to figure out how he's going to, where he needs to go to leave his medication in a secure place, or whatever it might be. He's got to be independent, and he's starting to learn that as you go through this process. So you want to think through how that can work. I think that one of the really important things that you can do as a parent with the college visit is to come up with ways that you can make sure that after a visit you're talking about it. Sometimes it's sort of the 20 minutes of no headphones after you leave the campus, because there are some students, your sons may not be among them, that immediately will put the headphones in upon entering the car, or perhaps before entering the car. And that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't give you time to say, well, what did you think? What did you like? What did you react to? I think one of the hardest things for those of you who haven't gone through the process is when you have gone through, okay, you're going to visit 5 schools, and you've made all the arrangements, and you've driven many miles, and you get to the parking lot of a particular school, and your son says, "I don't like it." You're like, okay, I'm not in the park yet, and you don't like it? And it's an interesting thing. It will happen probably to some of you, and it is an instinct that he is having, and I think that you have to decide. I think for most families, I would say, okay, I can understand that you don't like what you're seeing around the campus, or it's just not feeling good, but we're here, we've made an appointment, let's at least go on the tour, or let's at least go to the information session, or whatever it may be. And it may be that you go to the, the first hour of whatever it is you're planning to do that day, and different colleges will have different opportunities. Some will have group sessions in rooms not usually this big, but sometimes this big, sometimes a little bit smaller. Some will have individual interviews, lots will have campus tours. And again, I think part of it is saying, all right, well, we're here, so kind of the deal is we need to at least spend a little bit of time. But if after that hour your son still says, it just feels wrong, then realize that it's been a successful visit because he's crossed a school off his list. Because in the end, he's got to eliminate schools that he's interested in. So it's not been a waste of time. At the same time, you know your kids best, and there are some kids who get onto a college campus and it's really a case of the nerves that makes them say, I don't like it, because they're thinking, oh gosh, I don't want to go in and have a conversation with that scary admissions person. And so you have to, again, you've got to know your sons well enough to know when to push and when to just kind of say, okay, I understand. And I've always said to families that the worst thing that happens on a college visit is a funny story to tell later. It's really not something that's going to be a painful experience. It's really going to be one where you learn a lot. You might actually have some fun. Lots of families do when they're doing the visits. Some families will split up during a campus visit so that while the son is off having the interview, the parent is over in the student center eavesdropping on what's going on, or they're in the bookstore, or they're walking around. You don't have to be tied at the hip when you're on a campus at a college visit, and sometimes that helps you then have more conversation later. A couple of other things, though, that are important about the kinds of schools that your son might consider as he's trying to find places that are good matches. If you have very specific restrictions in mind for your sons. You need to let them know, and you need to let the counselor know early in the process. So if you decide that it's really important in your family for your son to go to a college that's a religiously based school, and those are the schools that you want him to look at, that's going to be an important thing to say right away. If it's really important to you that you're able to easily drive to the campus where your son is going to go to college, then you want to make sure he's looking at schools only within whatever you've defined as that driving distance. It's really sad to see sometimes when parents have these biases or these restrictions or these strong feelings, but for whatever reason they don't feel like they can say it early on, and then their child gets excited about a college, applies, gets admitted, and then mom and dad say, oh, we never intended to let you actually go that far away from home. That's not fair. It's not fair to your sons. It's not fair to the people who have supported him through this process. It's one of those things that you need to be owning up front. At the same time, we all know that sometimes our feelings change. And so maybe it's after a campus visit where you say, gosh, I'm just not comfortable with you going to school at this particular campus. And that's something that you didn't know at the beginning. And so that's a different story. But I think that there are times where, with all good reasons, and it's interesting, in my family I have several nieces who have been going through this process, different ones, different years. And I have a wonderful brother-in-law, but he's been driving me crazy with his younger daughter because he's into this whole sort of, he keeps adding schools to the list of places she ought to apply, which is really makes me nuts. And I think he's doing it because he wants to see if she can get in.
Yeah.
And she's a very talented young woman, and she probably will gain admission. And so I say to her, well, would you go to that school? Well, no. And I said, well, there are kids who really want to go to that college that might end up on the waiting list because you're doing that. And then she goes, can you tell my dad that? I said, yeah, I'll tell him. But it's one of those things where, again, you don't want to ever be applying to places, having your sons apply to places, encouraging your sons to apply to places where you don't want them to go ultimately, or where there's this sort of sense of, let's see if he can gain admission to the particular school. You need to trust in the process even though it's unpredictable. I think that one of the things that can be hard for some parents is that for some of you this might be one of the first times in your lives that you can't deliver something that your son really wants. Maybe he does fall in love with a particular school. He thinks that it's the place for him. I'm here to say there are many places for each student out there. But it's hard when you're 17 and you fall in love with a particular place. And as moms and dads, you want your kids to be happy. But you don't have control. You have control in how you support your son through the process, but you don't have control ultimately in the admissions decision that will be rendered. My best advice to you is that you celebrate the victories and you dismiss the defeats. And if a college doesn't offer your son admission and it's a place where he'd really like to go, the best thing you can do is to say, well, it's their loss. They missed out on having a great day. Throw it away and move on to the positives. I think there are parents whose instinct is tempting to say, oh, I am so sorry and I feel so bad. And no, you want to be, as much as you can, you want to help empower your son to sort of just, again, look at what's happening that's positive and tell him how proud you are of him and what he's accomplished and where he's going to go. Because again, every one of your sons who wants to go to college is going to go to college. And that's one of the great things about higher ed in the U.S. and certainly the access that these students have to higher ed all around.